Welcome back to a new episode of the Women's Strength Society show. Today we are going to talk about how low carb is making your PMS symptoms worse, increasing your sugar craving, making you wired and tired, possibly increasing ADHD-like symptoms. Did I forget something?
It makes also like perimenopause symptoms worse.
Oh yeah, true that. It's also slowing you down in your progress in the gym, preventing you from building the muscles and the shape that you want to create with your workouts. As you can already tell, we are not really pro low carb, and we think that a higher carb, moderate carb, higher carb approach is going to be best for you in the vast majority of cases. And today we were reminded of that.
Oh, yeah.
Because you just got like a very cute message on one of your posts on Instagram. You're going to read it.
Yeah, I got a message. I woke up this morning and I saw this message. And messages like this always make me smile because I'm like, yes, this is the shit that we are doing day in, day out. And it's just amazing to see the feedback, right, from the ladies, from our clients. And one of our ladies wrote... And I think she's already a year with us, at least a year. And she wrote, "Love you, girl. I've never felt so good in my body. No more food noise, no more bloating, no more controlling ADHD, PCOS, perimenopause symptoms, endometriosis, PMS. I'm feeling stronger than ever before." And I think like this is just it beautifully wraps up everything that we are doing with the clients that we work with. It's not only about dropping some body fat and becoming the most shredded version of yourself, but then like at the back end of it, sacrificing your health. But it's really about connecting the dots and making sure that you look your best, but also feel your best day in, day out.
Yeah, and just like to make sure we're on the same page here, it's very important. We are not claiming that simply increasing your carbs is going to cure like endometriosis or PCOS, sorry.
It's called different now.
Oh yeah, it has a new name.
PMOS, I think.
Something with metabolism in it.
Yeah, the M is inside the P.
All right, but you get the gist. We are not saying like just triple your carb intake and then everything is going to solve all of your problems in your life. That's not the case. But what we are saying is that carbohydrates are important, and that what we see very, very often is that women who come to us, they tend to eat a lower carb intake. And the main reason for that is because it's become very, very mainstream to say that carbohydrates are bad. And there are multiple reasons for that. This is also something cyclical because it was already popular in the 70s with the Atkins diet, and then Duncan diet later on. And then it came back as the keto diet and... low
it's
carb,
kind of
high fat, LCHF.
Wrapped up in a different wrapper.
It is, and so it's interesting because it's mainly used for like the main reason is actually marketing purposes. And so what you have to know is that a low carb diet, or very specifically even like a very low carb diet or keto diet, is something that has been used therapeutically for over a century now. And it was interesting because I was talking about that with one of our members a while back, and she was like, yeah, this is still pretty new and something that people haven't been paying attention to before. And I'm like, actually, a low carb approach and very low carb in therapeutic setting is actually pretty old. And it was used in children to help with epilepsy. And for some reason, it has made its way into diet culture. And one of the reason is because the mechanism behind it. Once you cut out the carbs entirely, then your metabolism shifts so much towards the aerobic side and to the fat burning side that you get into ketosis. And once this happens, then your body functions slightly differently. And usually for a lot of people, it means that they are going to be slightly less hungry, or their hunger cue is going to change. Their energy is going to be slightly different. And at first, it means that it's easier to stay in a calorie deficit, which is the main reason why people lose weight on a low carb or keto diet. And so they think like, oh, the reason why I'm losing so much weight is because I'm in ketosis and I'm cutting out the carbs. And since carbs raise insulin, then and insulin is the quote unquote master fat storage hormone, then because there's no carb coming in, there's no insulin, and thus my body cannot store fat, and that's why I'm losing weight. But it's actually not really the case. The case is you losing weight because you are in a calorie deficit, and you can sustain the calorie deficit because of the effect of ketosis. But super important, not everybody gets very easily in ketosis. That's one thing. And so on your way to there, you might really, most people who are in the low carb space talk about, the keto flu. When you're not really fat adapted, then you are going to feel like crap. And they say like, yeah, this is normal for a few days, but sometimes it lasts for a few weeks and you don't really know, like, am I doing it right? Am I not doing it right? Most of the time when you express something like that, then what you hear is you're doing it wrong. You're still eating too many carbs. And then it's like, yeah, but your almonds have too many carbs, or you're eating too much protein, and blah, 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 blah. And so initially feeling like crap is one of the main side effects and symptoms that you can experience when you go on a low carb diet. But this is something that can really last for a long time and never disappear. And this is definitely something that happened to me when I tried to just push the low carb diet forever. My hands started to get very cold. My digestion slowed down. I was super sluggish. Also in my mind, it was literally difficult to think and count. And I'm actually pretty good with numbers, so it was kind of freaky to not be able to do like simple math. It was really like strange. Okay, what's happening to me? I thought that, cutting out the carbs was supposed to make me a superhuman. Because what you hear, literally, it was like the bulletproof. That's the next
coffee?
iteration, of how to market low carbohydrate diets. It's like, you eat the carbs and then you have an increase in blood sugar and then like a spike in blood sugar, and then it crashes down. And because of that, then you become hypoglycemic. And so you have to eat like fast digesting carbs, because otherwise you just don't feel good. But then you have the peak again, and it raises inflammation. And I don't remember what they say. But I was genuinely convinced that eating carbohydrate, no matter the type of carbohydrate and no matter the amount, was going to be problematic.
And it's the time when we started working together, where you became my nutrition coach, where I reached out to you because I was paying so much attention to my nutrition and working out consistently in the gym, but my body was not changing. And I thought, it's my hormones. I also got the diagnosis of PCOS. I had some weight gain. Like, I couldn't figure out how to get rid of the body fat and get in shape. And I felt like, hey, for everything that I'm doing and everything that I'm putting into this, like the effort into my nutrition and training, I should see visible results in the mirror. This is what I have expected. And I didn't have that. And so I reached out to you to get support on my nutrition specifically. And I remember back then that you were definitely in that keto bubble. You also worked in a keto cafe.
Yes.
Where I definitely got this one little, they're making those Snicker bars and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think the most popular one was actually the one with coconut. What's the name? Bounty.
Yeah,
Bounty bar.
A Bounty bar. And
Yeah.
I remember showing up to the shop. I think you were not there, but thinking like, oh, this is like the keto stuff, and everything that's in here, like I can eat all of that because it's quote unquote healthy, or it will help me to burn fat more efficiently. And so there was also no talk about like the amount of food that you're eating. And back then I then started to do the keto for like 4 weeks. And I was actually feeling pretty good back then. I didn't had those flu symptoms you were talking about, referring to.
But you were also in ketosis, right? Because when
Yeah.
you were peeing on the small strips, then it showed that you were actually in ketosis.
Yeah, I was. And then like when we started working together, we put me on a like low carb diet. So the keto is really, I think, below 25 grams of carbs a day, or it starts below 50.
Yeah, so generally it's below 50.
Below
but
50.
It's also like if you want to do a keto diet, it's not only about cutting out the carbs, it's also about the amount of fat that you're getting in.
Yeah.
And the amount of fat should be around 70% of your total intake.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I was definitely doing that. But after that, when we were working together, it was more so a like low carb approach. I was not on like 50 grams of carbs. It was not that low. So I also want to make that differentiation. So keto and low carb are also a little bit slightly different approaches in terms of nutrition.
And this is actually the worst of both worlds, right? Because
you're not in
ketosis, but at the same time your carb intake is low. And so even though I'm pretty biased towards eating the carbs, I do recognize that in some situations the keto diet can be beneficial, and that specifically being in ketosis and using ketone as fuel can be something that is beneficial, or at least that is quite good. Even though you have to remember, like, this is a survival mechanisms from the body. So it's not something that I'm definitely not saying like stay all of the time in ketosis. It will have no consequences. But if you do want to go, what I'm saying is if you do want to go low carb, then this is what I would do instead of being low carb but not really in ketosis, which is basically what we did when we were working together at the very beginning. And it's very interesting because at that time I was already questioning all of that, because I had already experienced what it's like to not feel great on a low carb and or keto diet, because I tried both, and I was already seeing in myself the benefits of having a higher carbohydrate intake. I don't remember exactly how it came about. I know that this was
so someone was sneaking in the carbs, and all of a sudden you were like, oh, this feels good. I feel amazing. Like, what was that?
No, I think I was back then. I was already like fascinated by the word metabolism, because I was suspecting that mine was not super high, whatever it means, and I was like, what is metabolism? What does it mean? And so I started to Google that simply, and for some reason I landed on quite the opposite side, which is like the pro-metabolic crowd, inspired by Ray Peat. And so they are eating a lot of carbs all day, every day, orange juice, milk, ice cream,
Häagen-Dazs.
And so so I landed there, and it's obviously quite a stretch, right? So I was on one side doing the low carb keto stuff. I was still working at that cafe. The certifications that I was doing at that time, they were also hammering the low carb approach, saying like you have to earn your carbs and that sort of things. And then at the same time, like reading all of those articles and report from people, like testimonies essentially from people who are feeling better, or having a pro metabolic effect from eating the carbs. And it was resonating with me because it was end of spring, beginning of summer, and my hands were just like so cold even though it was warm outside. And I was like, this is actually not really normal. My brain was frozen. My digestion was super slow. And I was reading about like the pro metabolic diet and approach and that sort of things. And so I think at some point I was like, okay, I'm going to be very subversive and try to add some sweet potatoes and some fruit.
Bad boy.
And then suddenly, like, I felt like I had more energy. My digestion started to be a bit quicker, and I was feeling warm. And so I was like, there's something funky with that very radical low carb approach. It's not possible to simply demonize the carbs and say that they are all bad if I am feeling certain benefits very, very obviously when I do eat them. And it was very obvious because it was reproducible. So if I was cutting out the carbs, then I would have the negative impact. And if I was reintroducing them, then I would have the benefits and the positive impact of that. And so I was like, okay, there's something going on there. And then we started working together. And I think you had less of those symptoms, but you had other negative effect from a lower carb approach. And one of them was that your weight was actually going up.
Yep.
Which to me, it made absolutely no sense, because what I was taught and what I strongly believed at that time was you eat carbs, you have a spike in blood sugar. It produces a release of insulin, because carbs is so bad and so toxic in your blood that your body has to produce like a huge amount of insulin to remove that from your bloodstream, because otherwise you're going to burn from the inside essentially. And so if you don't eat the carbs, you don't have the blood sugar spike, you don't have the insulin, and then you're not going to store fat. So I was expecting when we started working together that you would lose weight naturally since you are not eating the carbs, but the opposite happened.
Yeah, and I was like feeling so, I mean, it was not only the weight gain, because you can also gain weight and look good. Like looking back at my building phases, you can also like put on muscle mass, like gain weight, and you can see there is more shape. But back then when I did the low carb thing, I was getting so puffy and fluffy. I don't have any pictures from that time. Maybe like one when I went on the Camino, where I was just like, I'm looking like a square. Like it was just, I was becoming wider and wider, and everything, like my skin, like everything looked just puffy. This is, I think, the best word that helps me describe my body composition. I think it's really the worst that I felt. It was really the lowest point probably in that journey, in terms of like how I felt in my own skin. And that was already 4 years into my journey, right? It was also right before then the breakthrough came the year later. So I'm glad I made that experience, because now I know otherwise, and we can support our ladies to not experience like the same symptoms. And it's crazy. So I experienced that. I then after that worked with another coach who again put me on a lower carb diet, and the same thing happened. I again gained weight. I didn't feel good day to day. And then, and I think that was a conversation we had. You said like, hey, maybe just do what you think you should do. I was like, okay, I know what to do. I will eat my carbs. And I started eating carbs again, and I dropped some weight, and I was feeling better. And I remember bringing that also up to that coach back then, and she was like, yeah, that's really strange. I don't know how this happens, but I've saw it with so many women already that I'm working with. But then her conclusion from that was, let's do a green week where we put you on eating only green vegetables to detox your body. And I was like, what the fuck? Like, I'm just here figuring out that potentially my body needs the carbs and I feel better and I'm getting into a better shape by eating them. And you want to put me on a no carb diet. I mean, when you're just eating green vegetables, you can like count how many carbs you're getting in a day. It's really not a lot. And so this is when I quit and when I ran and when I was like, okay, I will need to figure this out differently, but definitely I will not stick to a low carb diet. And it's something that we see, you know, all of the time with the ladies that come to us. They're cutting out carbs more and more and more because at some point maybe someone was telling them, hey, you need to cut out the carbs to get in better shape. And yes, it can work, right? Because if you're cutting back on one macronutrient, you will potentially eat less calories overall. And so you will be in a calorie deficit. But it's not a long-term strategy to just eat low carb forever. If you are here to be in like the best shape of your life, add some muscle mass to your frame, be in like great health, and just thriving in your everyday life, not having constant energy crashes, nighttime cravings, being constantly bloated is something that we see a lot with a low carb approach for women, because their body is simply like highly stressed from not getting enough of the macronutrient in that's giving you like the energy for life, literally, and the energy for your training sessions, because we are also only working with women who are lifting weights. So these are not like couch potato women. They want to do the lifting. Some of them are also like into the cardio, so they're doing both. And we need to fuel that. And if this is not getting fueled properly, and you have that low carb approach as really like your lifestyle, your way of eating, then it will backfire at some point. And so often we see that women are not making the connection between their low carb approach when it comes to their diet and the symptoms they are experiencing day in, day out. And this is where we then come in, because once we try things out, we see that things are getting better when it comes to the symptoms. The message I was reading at the very beginning of the podcast is an amazing example of that, because it was not that she was listing out her symptoms and she knew, hey, it's a nutrition problem. It just came that we dialed in her nutrition and made sure that she is getting fueled properly. Also, not overtraining. This is also a huge topic, but that's for another episode. We are talking about nutrition today specifically. But getting properly fueled for the activity level that you have in your like day in, day out. And not only activity level in terms of going to the gym and how many sessions, how many hours you're spending in the gym, but in general, like how active are you as a person? Are you busy? Are you like ambitious? Are you like, do you need to function? Like, do you want to be focused and sharp? And one thing that she also said was the no more ADHD. How did she name
Controlling ADHD.
Controlling ADHD, which I found super interesting. Because if you are not giving your body what it actually needs, you're just running like, either you are like frozen, like Yannick was mentioning, Or it can even have a little bit the opposite effect of like some more racing thoughts that are uncontrolled is maybe the wrong word, but a little bit like all over the place.
Yeah.
All over the place is the word that I was looking for.
Being agitated, and this is something that arises because you're like glucose is the main fuel in your body, and even when you are in ketosis, then at least 25% of your energy come from glucose still. And this is something that not a lot of people mention. You also need glucose for your red blood cells so that they can transport oxygen, because they don't have mitochondria, which means that they cannot burn anything else for fuel, but those are like living organisms and they need that to be able to transport oxygen. So if you are cutting out the the supply, then you are starving your body of oxygen essentially. So it's like you are doing everything as if you were underwater holding your breath, which is not fun. And so thankfully your body is very, very clever, and it has a lot of mechanisms to compensate for that for the times where you don't have as much food coming in, and specifically carbs in that scenario. But what it means is that some hormones are going to go up. Glucagon, cortisol, and also adrenaline. And this is going to have a massive impact on your behavior, on your nervous system, on your attention span, because those hormones, like they have an impact on how your nerves are firing. And the thing is, like, everybody reacts slightly differently to that, but generally this is something that can absolutely happen, especially in that lowish carb approach where you're not really in ketosis, but you're also like not getting enough carbs for your, like, in relation to your activity level. And then you are constantly looking for food, and your attention is just like heightened. You are driven to try and find something to eat. And I think like pretty much everybody listening to that right now, if you've made it this far in the podcast, then you know what I'm talking about. It's just like being slightly, not really impatient, but on the lookout for something to snack, and being like, okay, where's my, I need something, like a small time, that kind of feeling, a bit like springy, and where is it?
Yeah.
And never truly satisfied, because you're at the same time, like, carbs are forbidden, and you don't allow yourself to eat enough of that. So even if you do have some carbs, then most of the time it's going to be like a very, very low starchy, low GI carb, squash or whatever. And or maybe one bite of, I don't know, a piece of bread or a cookie or something like that.
Melting on your tongue.
Yeah. And it's like, it feels like you're doing something forbidden by eating that, and you're really, where is it? And so this is really impacting the way that you're thinking. It's impacting your mood, it's impacting your drive and motivation. And this is something that it's very, very hard to grasp, because you are only told like carbs are bad, they are bad for body composition, they drive inflammation, avoid sugar because of blood sugar crash, and if you keep eating the sugar, then you will have diabetes and you will become obese and overweight and whatnot. And so this is something that you start believing, because it's a message that's kind of repeated over and over and over and over again, and it's simply not true, right? But then in the moment, you've heard that so many times, you think that this is going to apply it for you, and you don't see the connection, because those are things that are not really talked about. Nobody comes out and say, or like, there are a few people, but there are also a few big voices in the wellness and fitness space who are arguing that carbs is the worst and that kind of things. And so they are not they're not saying carbs are bad. Oh, but by the way, it's actually pretty important if you want to, being able to to think clearly, and to be focused and to have good drive and energy and that kind of things, because it doesn't really fit their narrative and it doesn't really fit their agenda. And so you don't think about that, and you only realize once somebody like us come into your life and tells you like, hey, actually it's pretty important that you eat enough carb, especially if you are going to the gym and, as you were saying, you're not a couch potato and you want to go after it and you need that kind of energy. Then you need that. Here's the framework of how we are going to reintroduce the carbs and increase the carbs so that you can thrive, but also not just go up like Michelin man. And so once you do that, then in hindsight, then you're like, oh, okay, this was actually tied to that. And then you go through a few times experiencing what it's like to cut out the carbs again and then having them back in. And then you're like, okay, this is kind of a trigger that you can switch on and off, and then it's going to pretty much always have the same kind of impact. And so this is something that you realize only in the aftermath of going through that kind of journey.
And I think this is the one thing that, really pisses me off when it comes to health and fitness advice for women specifically, because those ladies who are really trying their best and following the rules of cutting out the bad carbs to make sure insulin is not, and keep the insulin down and the cortisol, and we want to have flat blood sugar levels and all those things. Because you are not making that connection between your symptoms and your diet, your dietary approach, you think it's something different. You think it's then the hormones, it's your age, it's like the
metabolism, slow metabolism.
The slow metabolism, it's the PCOS diagnosis, it's gluten. It's the gluten.
Yeah.
Like all of those things, maybe your gut, like we don't say that those things and those symptoms don't require, attention and also checking it with your doctor, like 100%. But we have just seen that the first layer that we need to get covered and dialed in with our women is the nutrition piece and the diet piece, and making sure they are properly covered when it comes to calories and macronutrients. And so once we dial that in, then we see like, hey, how are things improving? What's happening with those symptoms? And then you can take kind of the next level approach and go even further. But what I did in my journey and what I see with so many women is they are trapped in also spending a lot of money on stuff that should potentially help them. And I'm not talking about like medical support from a doctor. I'm talking about supplements, for example. We have worked with so many ladies. We have onboarded so many women, over 1,000 women through our challenges. The amount of women who are spending a lot of money on supplements, it's huge. Like a woman who doesn't even know how many carbs and protein and fat she really needs to maintain her body weight is spending a fortune on her supplement stack. And this is something that really blows my mind, because the supplements, it's kind of like the next layer, but let's dial in the first and like the foundational stuff in your nutrition to make sure you're not having those symptoms, or at least we can minimize those symptoms. And then we are taking it like a step further, and we are going ahead and like dialing in and like the details of optimization with like supplements. Supplements are great. I'm not against them. But it's just crazy to me how much money we spend on the stuff that should kind of like cure the actual issue. For example, also with like bloating, the de-bloat drinks or green juices or whatnot.
Even like PMS. I mean, we've had enough
Oh my gosh,
ladies,
so much.
so far who are like, hey, my PMS is almost entirely gone.
Yeah.
I feel so much better. I don't have like those crazy cravings before my period. My mood is so much better. I can sleep better now. This is also like for women, in menopause, perimenopause, who report on having better sleep. And so, and one of the reason is very consistently because of a slightly higher carbohydrate approach, not only around the period but also throughout the cycle before that. And this is something, as you're saying, like where people are spending quite a lot of money, because those symptoms are very real. They can be very much debilitating, and very often then the solution is not that complicated. Or at the very least, having that in place, ensure that this is not contributing to the problem and making it worse, which is also something that happens very often. Sometimes it's absolutely like legitimate that there are some PMS or in that message she talked about endometriosis. Those are like serious issues that are not only related to your food intake, but if your food intake is not set properly, then it's just making the issue worse. And so by having a proper approach and ensuring that you're getting the right amount of different macronutrient, but especially from carbs, then it's going to ensure that at least this is not making things worse and potentially improving quite a lot of things. And on that note, I just want to go back to one thing that you were mentioning before, as we were working together and you felt like super puffy and inflamed. One way we were monitoring the progress was by measuring your skin fold. And this was very interesting to me back then, because what I learned was that as you lose weight and you get leaner and leaner and leaner, and you oxidize more fat, more body fat, and body fat is going down, then you're going to feel that your skin is getting softer and softer. And this is especially true, like the leaner you get. Once you get very lean, then the skin gets very, very soft. And this is something that I had experienced before, because I was practicing those measurement in a group with other coaches who were learning that. And this is something that you could actually feel.
Yeah.
And this is like pretty unmistakable. Like you can really feel the changes, and especially if you make those measurements over time and someone who's actually getting leaner and improving body composition, then you are going to feel the change in texture and how the skin behave. And as we were working together, then the opposite happened. The first time that I measured your skin, it was already quite thick and already quite hard. But as we were going the low carb rabbit hole, then it actually got worse, which was very surprising to me. And I was like, what's going on?
What's going on?
And so to close the loop, we were saying like, hey, it's only in hindsight that you make that kind of connection. Because then after that experience and over the years, then we certainly noticed that at some point your skin did get like softer and
like butter.
And thinner. So you could actually measure the change in body fat that was happening pretty much in real time. And you can really feel that the skin was very different, and you could also see it in the picture. But this is something that we could only understand, and a connection that we could make in hindsight, because we had that initial experience of the low carb approach not working. And so I just wanted to mention that, because again, I think that especially if like we work and advertise and market as a company who helps women get in shape and improve body composition, but we really try to go deeper than that because it's part of both our story to want to improve our health and pay attention to that. And this is also the thing that we actually want to to give forward and make sure that the women who come to us, they are not only getting lean and looking defined and having the muscle, but they're also improving their health, or at least if they have already, if they're in a great position health wise, then they are maintaining that and not making change in body composition at the cost of their health. And so I just want to really reinforce that point, that we are not just talking about having a higher carb intake for the purpose of just being jacked and looking a certain way, but really because we've seen time and times again in ourselves, but also in our clients, that this is something that has a very, very positive impact across the board, across many systems in your bodies, being your mind, how you feel emotionally, your drive and motivation, which is also important, resilience, just being able to handle like stressful seasons and situations, hormones, all of them, thyroid, reproductive hormones, also blood sugar hormones. We've seen that several times with blood works of before and after with less and more carbs. And the second one was always better with more carbs, which a lot of people don't really understand or expect.
And I think it's, just to wrap that up, it's, looking good is amazing. Looking good in the clothes that you are wearing, like getting up in the morning, putting on the clothes that you like, and just feeling sexy or whatever, confident, strong. All those things are great, like the aesthetics. But if you are truly like healthy and you have a certain like level of health and wellness, day in, day out, that has so much more impact on all the other areas of your life, your relationships, your career, like how you show up for yourself, how you show up for others. It will give you that confidence and like just deeply knowing that you and your body, you're capable of doing amazing shit in this world. And so that's the goal that we are after. We want to make you look sexy, but also make you feel great in your own skin in terms of how you are going through your day-to-day life. And so getting messages like this to like close the loop from our client shows like the impact of the work that can be done. And low carb is definitely one thing that we are fighting when it comes to, in the long term, creating those kind of results where performance, physique, and health really come together and help women to feel their best and be the badass chick in their world.
100%. And just again, like, sometimes in some very brief moment, then a low carb approach can be a tool that can be useful, but not just as a rule and lifestyle that's really taking over everything that you're doing. So next time in the next episode, we are going to talk about how to approach that and make some of the changes if you are currently being ruled by the low carb approach and you resonate with some of the symptoms and things that we talked about, and you've been brainwashed literally as I was about like the benefits of the so-called benefits of low carbs, and you're like, this is actually me and I want to get out of it. Then in the next episode, we are going to be more practical and tactical about how to make those changes. So until next time, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.